Welcome to Season 3 of Locker Room for Growth, a show with human-centric conversations that include compelling stories, unique professions, and those who set the tone for living with a positive attitude. I'm your host, Debbie Elicksen. Please subscribe to the show and check out our past episodes and clips. Follow me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and more. Now let's meet our next guest.
Transgender and 2S LGBTQIA rights have been front and center of political dysfunction for generations. Society's hypocrisy and hate is blasting in bright pink neon if you look at pop culture and revered characters over the years. Tim Curry in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire, Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie, and several Halloween costumes, to name a few. Savannah Hauk is a non-binary TEDx speaker, author, and podcast host, and a 2S LGBTQIA plus advocate. They know what it's like to live a dual life. Crossdressing is how they manifest their gender identity. Hauk is a previous guest, and so much has transpired socially and politically since that interview. While where one lives has always had an impact on how one is treated socially, today there is a disturbing and hateful trend to erase a community's human rights in a warlike fashion. Understanding, education, and tolerance are needed to combat the misconstrued messaging being spewed by a minority group still trying to hold on to power. We may not solve society's issues, but it's a discussion we need to keep shining a light on. These are our neighbors, our children, our siblings, our friends. We owe it to everyone to work towards making this world more inclusive. Meanwhile, Hauk's book, Living with Crossdressing, The New Normal, is available on Amazon and other book platforms. Please welcome Savannah Hauk.
Hey, hi again after all these years. It seems like it's been a millennium since we've seen each other.
It does, doesn't it? And it's probably only been a year.
I know, but it seems like it's been forever. Especially when you're talking about in the intro, you know, how the world is right now.
It's just crazy how it's gotten, and it wasn't like perfect when we talked last, but holy crap, now it's something else. So let's just clear something up.
Okay.
We did discuss it in the last show, but just let's clear something up for those who are unfamiliar. Being a crossdresser doesn't make a person gay or trans, but they are part of the 2S LGBTQI plus community and family. Cross-dressing men often have cis partners, right? Mm-hmm. And you have a cis partner.
I do. She's in the other room right now, corralling the dogs. Make sure keep everybody quiet for us.
Right on. So, when did you own your identity?
I do have to put a marker in something you said.
Okay.
That cross-dressing is what I do, is not who I am. And I do have a new book coming out in May that discusses gender, like end to end. And what I've discovered since the last time you and I spoke is that cross-dressing is not my identity. Cross-dressing is simply an action I take to get from my male form to my female form. So the deeper question is, why do I need a female form? Mm-hmm. So in that way, yes, I'm non-binary, dual gender. So I am actually trans in a non-transitioning way, if you want to say the transgender umbrella versus the transgender group that is previously known as transsexuals. And it kind of like got depopularized several years ago. So transgender became the equals transsexual, you know, for transitioning, for people taking medical, chemical, methods to get more in line with how the brain and their body works together. Right. So I am dual gender and I am in the big umbrella. I'm just not in the small umbrella. So, but when did I own up to it? Own up to it. That sounds terrible. It's like when do you own up to it? You did it. You know you did it. For me, it was 1996 in New York City. I was with my wife at the time. Obviously, I'm no longer with my wife, but I've been talking and thinking and spewing and stewing and self-assessing on this since I was 7 years old. 5 to 7 years old is when I knew there was something, and I acted on it. And I didn't think anything bad about it. All those mentions at the top of the show about Tim Curry and Dustin Hoffman, those were people I knew were doing what I was doing, but only Frankenfurter was the one who was doing it because that's who they were, not because trying to deceive somebody or get a job or get an apartment or see their kids. It's like, so I didn't really like see them as like, oh, that's who I am. They were just doing something very similar to me. But in 96, I said, I'm a crossdresser. I'm a transvestite, because transvestite in 96 was the word to use. And it was already laden with like tranny and as a slur. So I kind of really divorced myself from that with crossdresser. Unfortunately, for 20 odd years, I'm saying I'm a crossdresser, but in reality, cross-dressing is what I do, and dual gender and non-binary is who I am.
And you're not the only. Well, actually, let's go back to Tim Curry and Rocky Horror Picture Show, because that is a cult classic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about this year because of all the craziness going on, but up until this last year, it was like a tradition certain times a year where theaters would do like a midnight viewing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. People would go to this thing dressed up, as their favorite character from the show. And it was all embraced.
Yes. You took your squirt gun, you took your umbrella, you took your rice, your newspaper, you took all those things for all the cues that you're supposed to, I was a virgin in the 90s. I went to a midnight show in Manhattan, and I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Nobody gave me a script of like how to yell back at the screen. So I mean, it was like bizarre. I'm like, wait, why are they saying what they're saying? It made no sense to me until you actually really get into the kind of the cultness of it. And it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah. Actually, I have an umbrella that my friend from Pittsburgh sent me, because the newspaper they have on their head, Janet, and when they go to the mansion, it's the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And my friend worked for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at the time. And so she sent me this umbrella, and it's all these headlines or these front pages of the Post-Gazette. So
that's fantastic. Wow, you're doing like killing two birds, one stone. That's fantastic. We need to like go to a show.
Yes, I'd love that. Because just even still watching that show. But I mean, it's so, the hypocrisy, like I said, it's got a neon light on it, because all these characters we still kind of revere. Tell me who hates Mrs. Doubtfire, right?
No. Who hates David Bowie? Who hates Annie Lennox? It's so funny. I see this all the time as a meme on Facebook, where it's like, I don't understand why people, want to dress up as women, and they show like all these 80 hair bands.
Oh yeah,
like
I was just
Poison and Kiss and Dokken and Rat, and you're like, I wonder how we ended up this way. When all our idols looked exactly that way, very feminized, as really tough, masculine, guitar shredding heroes of ours. So it's very funny.
And they were hot. Those men were hot. Like I still pine for that look.
Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with the 80s.
Blonde hair, I'm in, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because the 70s was all punk rock, and it had the long hair, and it had like the skin tight jeans and pants and stuff, like the Who and Zeppelin, but in the scarves, obviously.
But the hair metal bands,
the hair metal really feminized the genre.
They had it all going on.
So yeah, I don't understand how we've gone 40 some years, and like people have forgotten their roots. And me as a Gen Xer, I have not forgotten my roots. But I'm, like I said, the hypocrisy of like, we won't stand for him. Like, you were alive. I know you were alive because you're an old man in politics. And I know you remember, maybe they didn't like that back then either. So I don't know.
But Savannah, the people that, you say 40, actually 40, 50 years or whatever it is, those are the people today that are doing the complaining and, doing all this stuff. So it's like, it does make sense. But anyway.
I wish I could. I mean, I am still true to the bands I like, to the influence I had. I'm just more me than I was. I'm not less me. I'm more me, especially with like decades of self-analysis and therapy and figuring it out and understanding what it means for me and what it doesn't mean for me. So for me, yes, hetero. I live 95% of my life as a man. In my job, in my career, with my neighbors, with my girlfriend, and there's 5% that's Savannah who needs to kind of, shake off those tail feathers every once in a while.
So you are not the only person living with a dual gender, and it's estimated that 1.7% of the population identify as dual gender, and that's compared to about 10% who are 2S LGBTQIA+.
Okay.
So identity is not a persona, but a part of a whole person, I would think. So how much of this simple one trans fits all box is more about, what's it about really? Is it about laziness? We know it's control, but is it more laziness than fear? Because how can it be?
Ooh, you're nailing, Debbie, you're nailing it. You're making me think on my feet here. Is it laziness? Yes, because you could say that for every human being. If there's something I don't want to do and I don't know about it and I don't care to know about it, why am I going to expend energy to learn something outside myself that has nothing to do with myself? So in that way, we're all just like ducks on a pond with our feet just blazing away, but only doing the stuff that is pertinent to us. That's when you hear stories of like, I didn't know anything about the trans community until my nephew or my son or whatever came out as trans, and all of a sudden now they're scrambling to figure it out because they never put any effort into learning about something that didn't have anything to do with them. So is it lazy? No, I just think we have a capacity for learning. Some of us are searchers, some of us are discoverers, adventurers. We love learning stuff, just learning stuff to learn. But for the most part, it's just we're doing our day to day and we're struggling through that. And we're not spending a lot of time doing things outside of us. So in that way, yes, it's lazy. But what does it rot? It rots fear. When you don't know something, you're ignorant. Therefore, what you don't understand, you typically fear because that's another part of the human condition.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it can be solved if people just stepped out of their little bubble and got to know other people. Broaden, diversified their friends.
Yeah. And that's another part. That's another part of the human experience. We love being in communities with people like ourselves. It makes us feel safe and comfortable, and we have commonality. So even as a human condition, it's like we stick with the people we know who we're comfortable with, and we're not necessarily venturing out to find somebody in a queer community if it's not who we are, or if we're not adjacent to it.
Yeah. The chances are, I'd say there's a good chance every single family, if 2S LGBTQ plus people are 10% of the population, there's a guarantee there's at least one person in your fairly immediate family.
Yeah, and it would be more evident if we weren't hiding.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about education, you're talking about visibility. And the problem is somebody like me, I'm still only out to a certain percentage of people I know. And those are the people I care most about, whether it's coworkers or my girlfriend or her family. Or
well, you're kind of doing it right now.
Yeah, but my girlfriend tells me all the time that I don't look anything like my male side. So I think I can get away with it. But yeah, absolutely. I said it in the first TEDx that if somehow somebody saw that and realized it was me, and they would run over to my parents' house with their laptop, because my parents don't have internet, and said, look, I think this is your son, the jig would be up. But I was okay with that. So, but I wasn't going to do it purposefully or with intent, because it just, I didn't want to lose what I had with my family as it was. So there's fear on our side too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And you've described that living in different communities can make or break the difference in being accepted. So how much of today's like since our last show, current political climate has complicated this from just a couple of, even just a year before we talked, like it's complicated it.
It's complicated. There's so much being put to the forefront. I don't know what the count is now after sessions around the country in each state have ended. I believe there, at last count, there was over 600 bills in committee that people were trying to put into law. The problem is, well, luckily, I believe in Florida, of all the ones that were introduced, only one stayed, and nothing was managed by the end of session. So once the session ends, then those bills are off the books. So there's been pushback. There's been people who've gone to court and won against a non-constitutional, ruling or bill, even though it was enacted and signed into law. So we're starting to see that reason is kind of coming into play. Common sense is coming into play. That these are not the issues that Americans really care about. Like, it's being pushed. And I said it before, and we talked about it off air, that the fact that the conservatives, Republicans, whatever you want to say, whoever's introducing the bills, the fact that they're introducing so many so fast, all it's done, aside from, a lot of fear on our side of like, oh my God, what if these things do get passed? What does that mean for us in our daily lives? Absolutely, that's a concern. But it's also bringing it to a whole new level of not normalcy necessarily, but people are now more versed. They hear the word, whether they hate it or they love it, they're hearing transgender more and more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was hidden and secret, and we don't talk about it. Now they're trying to push us all back because we are making progress in our movement and in our lives. So by them doing this, it's actually done us a favor because it's opened up the conversation on a whole other level. People at home and people at the bars, whatever it may be, you're going to hear a lot more about it as we go forward.
Yeah, and now these backwards policies on gender, and we'll throw in abortion and voting rights too.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as the lawmakers want them to appear. I've been seeing things pop up about declining birth rates. And a lot of that is part of this because they want to control. They see declining birth rates, particularly among, well, let's just say white people, right? White cis people. And they don't like, instead of, becoming a better person to mate with, they want to put in these draconian policies to kind of force people into birthing, to keep the population going, because the population is shrinking in some countries. There's a report, I don't know what the percentage, but it's from South Korea, where they're in a declining stage. So their birth rate is less than the death rate. And so we're going to see that happen, and I think that's because they're not doing anything to improve people hooking up, I guess.
Hey, people are going to always hook up. I don't think that's ever going to change. It's just a matter of whether they want to have kids with that person.
Why would you get pregnant if you don't have any supports? Like in the U.S., you have no support if you're pregnant. So if you do have a healthy baby, you have no mat leave. You have no mat leave. You have nothing,
Yeah, in those ways where even like the father can take like 6 months paternity, like in France and places like that, it looks like America is so backwards in how it treats its citizens. Totally get it. Speaking about the abortion issue, the one thing, when Roe v. Wade got rolled back, instantly every state who had abortion policies on the books came into effect. We knew that. But what we're also seeing And also what we're seeing is a lot of those laws are on the books went into a referendum, and people were, voting yes or no on prop whatever to see whether the populace was for or against abortion in their own state. And it was kind of nice to see that, like I said before, the individual is not the one driving these laws and driving these things forward. It's like, listen, I like my autonomy. It's like men or women. It's like, I don't want somebody telling me how I should dress. I don't want them telling me where I should go. I don't want them to tell me what to do with my body. For women, it's a huge issue. For men, I mean, if it was a man being told what to do with his body, this would be a whole other country.
No shit.
So, like you said, there's a shrink, not a minority, but a shrinking population of elder statesmen, let's just put it that way, that were driving a lot of this change backwards. Surprisingly, we have a lot of people coming up in the same parties, acting and believing the same things. So yeah, it's gonna be another few decades before we get people who do know what trans is, who do understand what bodily autonomy is, who do understand what the populace at large wants, and not just make it like talking points so we don't deal with the real issues. We just deal with like transgender people. What? They're scary. I mean, I'm very scary. I mean, I'm surprised you have me on your show because I'm so scary. There'll probably be like just an X in front of my face. So it's really ludicrous in my eyes. But yet I am just a part of that umbrella. I'm just a part. Like, I'm not a fully transition person. I am not somebody living male or female 24/7.
And who the hell cares if you are?
Somebody does.
Like if you were fully transitioning, I mean, that wouldn't, you'd still be on my show.
Yeah, but then there's like, you're want to be a woman, but you'll never be a woman. Then there's the turf wars about like, you're taking away women's rights by trying to be a woman. It's just, I don't know. I try not to think about it because it's just a weird circular snake eating its tail kind of argument. And, right now there was the trans athletes banned, whether it's middle school,
and who's at the forefront of that? Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah, don't get me started with Caitlyn because she had a lot of things to say on Easter as well. But
dude, look at her, woman, look in the mirror.
This, you know what? I'm going to just say one thing, and whether it's true or not, I can't really say. But in my opinion, you have had somebody who spent a lot of time being a very successful man, an Olympian, speaker, whatever businesses he was running, even being on the Kardashian show. I'm sure he was bringing in money that way for his little part of things. I don't know. But yet there was something that he was hiding, to bring up Caitlyn. The interesting, and it's just like, this is what I don't understand, is like, as a trans woman, like you kind of expect that person to be really entrenched in the trans rights movement. But yet at every turn, it seems to be very old thinking, very Republican conservative thinking that's very anti-trans. And that's what I can't wrap my head around. But there's something deeper than any of us know. And whether it's just entrenchment in their belief system because they've been a man for decades, whereas I've been dealing with this pretty much since I was 5. So I am integrated in my duality. I'm not sitting there going, I deny. And then at age 65, I decide I'm going to be a woman, but never change my thinking. So yeah, who knows?
And that, and Caitlyn is not alone because there are other people that, we talked a little bit about it before we came on the show too. I'm not going to get into detail, but there are some of the policymakers who are practicing the stuff they're trying to lobby against. So I'll just say it that way.
And I don't think that's ever going to change. I don't think that's anything new, especially in American politics. You could probably look, from 1800s on of people saying one thing, and then you go either a year later or a decade later, or they're falling out of office where they're doing the thing they were lobbying against. It's something that just carries on because again, what's in the best interest of the person? Is
Yeah.
it the lobbyist? Is it a little money changing hands? Is it really the belief of their constituents? I don't know. But yeah, it's very sad to see the tail end of something after the damage they've done.
It is. And, there are some countries that refuse, like federally, refuse to jump on that authoritarian policy wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Argentina adopted gender identity, including sex change surgery, as a legal right in 2012.
Okay.
Pakistan adopted law in 2018 against discrimination against transgender people. And of course, my country, Canada, has modernized its description of gender in 2018. So a person's sex refers to biological characteristics such as male, female, or intersex, and gender refers to a societal identity such as man, woman, non-binary, or two-spirit. So, and yet this rise of anti-trans bills, state by state, province by province, are in contrary to these federal laws. How is this impacting people that live in the states who are part of these communities? Are they moving away from these states? Are they waiting to see what happens at the next elections?
Wow. I don't have any data on that. Just anecdotally, yes, there are people who, like, especially in Florida.
People who are, right?
Yeah, I mean, in Florida primarily, I know people, but I know plenty of trans people. Purely, like, they're in Florida, they have no interest in leaving. Whether or not the laws they believe apply to them or not, I can't say. But there are people who are in a wait and see. There are people who are concerned about their trans child, where right now the law says if a doctor gives you gender affirming care, he could be facing imprisonment. You could be facing imprisonment as an abusive parent. So absolutely, those people in that situation may very well try to flee the state for better care for their child. There are 100 reasons why you would move. And then, like you said, there's lots of reasons where people are just going to say, you know what, this is my state, and I'm going to fight for my beliefs and not just not cut and run for something easier. So I think it's both. And I think it's, both from the extreme point of view of, I got to get out of here for something safer, or I'm going to stand here and fight, and everybody else in between. So for me personally, these laws don't necessarily affect me because I don't really need gender affirming care. I am not a trans athlete, nor do I have any coordination or strength or skills. I don't go out enough to worry about the bathroom I'm using. And I'm also in the upstate of South Carolina. I really never have had a problem with any individual on the streets, in a restaurant, in a coffee house, at Lowe's building supplies. I've never had somebody do anything untoward to me in all the time I've been down here, which has now been 7-8 years. So, again, sometimes it's about the fear mongering that is put in front of us that, at those levels of state and municipality are kind of forcing the issue. But when you meet people, just people, I was like, those are not the people who are sitting there going, laws, I'm going to get you. No, because the typical person on the streets is not thinking in those terms. And they may be. You put enough of them together, they could have a coalition and think that way. But one-on-one, it's not that way.
Yeah. And we know that this overreach on gender policies and bodily autonomy is counter to federal laws where human rights and civil rights come into play. Do you see the courts as a place that can play this out? Is it even possible to even be able to use the courts if, half of them, the majority of the judges are conservative and part of this plethora? But
Debbie, I did not come on this show to be grilled like this.
I know, right? Well, this is, you don't have the answer, but this is just like a question that,
it's tough, but yet yes, I would agree.
If my first, if this were me, and I can say for the abortion side, like all those people that had to flee states to get life-saving care, for me, I would think you'd want to sue the ass off the state for putting your life in danger.
Yes.
But if they're all conservative judges on the court,
it's a tough one because, yes, I've had a concern for that. I've had a concern where if conservative lawmakers are making these laws and then they'll be upheld if anything ever happens.
Yeah.
But like I said, there have been a lot of bills on the floor that never made it to a vote, regardless of who brought it to the floor. There have been a lot of people who sued for whatever reason, and the higher courts have upheld the unconstitutionality of the law. So, and that is not just because they were all put in by Obama, when he was president. So they're not necessarily blue judges per se. So I think there is a temperament that it is tempered, even still with a fear of possible, I'll just either put it off because I don't want to deal with it and we'll just let it coast for a while. But at the end of the day, they do have the law of the land to uphold. They do have the constitutionality of it to uphold. So there would probably be bitter wars if somebody like in a higher courts were to say, yeah, no, we believe what they told us, because how are they gonna like prove in their dissertation or in their whatever they call it to say this is our decision why.
They are doing that from a voting rights standpoint. They are going state to state, with the voting maps, to take that to court and the local Supreme Court,
like changing the lines,
to change the lines. So they're doing that on the voting side. I can't see why one, you have to have a lot of guts to do it, but I can't see why one wouldn't do that from trans policy side or some of these other draconian issues.
I always like when you say draconian. Makes me think of dragons. This is the only thing I'll say, because it is keep your head down time right now for a lot of the trans community. A lot of women, a lot of voting, like a lot of redistricting and all, but we're also seeing a lot of pushback on people in charge. So while it's just, maybe after this year, things settle down and we move on to different things, maybe this is going to take another 2 decades for the ship to be righted. But it seems like the humans at large are not going to, the people who all have common sense, eventually there's going to be an implosion of the ridiculous lunacy, because it can't hold. The center cannot hold that. Okay. And I think, however much time it takes, I believe that eventually we will come back to a middle state of being where we're not seeing all these crazy laws trying to be passed. I truly believe that. Maybe I'm just too pessimistic or too optimistic and positive, but I've seen little inklings of it in different states, regardless of conservative judgeship or the fact that all these bills never made it off the floor and they just died on the floor. There is something to be said about not just the push against us, but the push for us, or just people saying, why are we spending our time on this? There will come a day when that is like what's being said, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah. And then karma will come in and take care of it.
Yes, karma will come in with their shield, fiery sword.
Yeah, with her fiery sword. Yes. Now, there are people, like you say, there are people that are pushing back, people that aren't part of this community that are really standing tall. We see it here and where I am in Alberta, where, well, just Google it. They're doing all the same things here as in Florida. So we're seeing pushback, but I have to wonder. I don't know if you have kids. I don't have kids, but we can kind of get an idea of how it might impact them when you think about all these people threatening school teachers and book bannings, and that has to take quite a toll on a dual gender kid, because if you put yourself where you are now, even if you were still trying to figure out your sense of being, and some of your friends, I mean, if you're going through trying to figure out yourself while this is going on, what does that do to you?
Oh, yeah. That's what therapy is for. I mean, yes, you imagine just any kid going through hormones and clicks and trying to fit in and just finding themselves, teenage years. I would never want to redo my teenage years ever. Then you toss in gender diversity, sexual questioning, all these things on top of that, which we now have language for. Like people were like, I'm straight or I'm gay or maybe bi. It's like there wasn't this plethora of like, oh, I may be asexual or I may be this or I'm demisexual. I'm like, the language has gotten so adaptive and further just to completion, just keeps going and going and expanding. Children have both the tools that they need, the knowledge that they need, but now they have to juggle even more facets of themselves earlier on. So I can't even imagine going through all those things as a young person, because it took my mid-20s to even think about accepting it for myself as a real tangible label. So imagine a 12, 13-year-old with all these labels at their disposal and either trying to walk through the minefield of them or being very absolute, like, nope, I'm this and I'm this and I'm this and I'm good. Done. So yeah, it's a lot going on. So to put that and all the people fighting against you, all the people higher up, like bashing you down,
including maybe your parents,
including maybe, or teachers or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I never had that component. I never had, as a white cis male, I never had, that worry. I never was out as Savannah. I was never like showing my non-binariness as a kid. So I never had to adapt to that hatred. It was really more of like my concern for my safety internally that I dealt with my entire life. So.
And I watched on Netflix the other day. I just finished watching it yesterday, I think. Alexander, the making of a god. And his greatest love was a man. And back in those days, and back until the Crusades and the Christianity started ruling the world, it was actually quite normal for same-sex relationships. So it just seems, again, the hypocrisy, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, before the Crusades and before the Reformation, I mean, that Reformation just splintered the church in and of itself. That's why Protestants hate Catholics. And it's like, aren't you all doing the same thing, but you hate each other with venom, and you can't figure out why? Well, it's because the Reformation decided to keep changing little bits and pieces that my God's better and your God sucks, and my language and Bible are better and yours isn't. That's a fascinating topic if you want to go down that road. Not with me, because I don't know anything.
Yeah. Well, even
I know
Spirit. I mean, Spirit, or I mean, the indigenous community is, that's part of their culture. Is there are people who are Two-Spirit, and that is accepted, right? There's nothing in that community that, well, there may be some, but you know what I mean. It's something that. It's part of your history, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, only certain tribes recognize Two-Spirit. It's not every tribe. So, like, I don't remember. I think Crow does.
Yeah.
I don't know if Cherokee does, but yeah, you could talk to different tribe nations, and they would say, no, we don't have that as part of our culture. Another one will have that.
But I mean, some do. And then just like with the Greeks and, going back into those early days, it's just almost laughable when you watch shows like this and see this. Like, that just got me thinking watching the Alexander series, which is really good, by the way.
I will keep that in mind. Right now, I'm
And
watching season 3 of Love Is Blind. So,
oh God, sorry, I'm not a romantic.
hey, don't
Anyway,
judge me. Don't
I
judge me.
won't judge you. I'm more the
We get interested in whether they're going to get married or not. So,
yeah. I think I'm watching the Bloody Duchess right now, so that's
that sounds good.
my side.
So you're a little more historical drama, I think, is where you're
Well, more blood and gore, but, and murder.
at. Nothing wrong with those.
But yeah, it's almost laughable just to think about, the hypocrisy of maybe that's why they want to erase history. I don't know. But here in Alberta, we have like that conservative emphasis on preferred names and consent and puberty blockers, and it's all dressed up as parental rights. Again, the fallout for the kids, I don't know about you, but what I see happening, especially if it's their parents, they're going to run away from home, which a lot of kids do. That a lot of the homeless kids are running away from home for this similar reason. A lot of the street kids are part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yep.
They're dropping out of school. And then, you sprinkle in what happens when that, just watch my last week's episode of the fellow who was drug addicted and the fallout from having a crappy home life and having, it's hopefully, like you say, we can correct this course, but that just goes to show you how important a vote is. But
very true.
So how does one find with all this stuff going on, how does one find a safe environment when you are a member of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community? Especially, like you say, most people come out in their 20s, I think, that I've talked to. So especially if you're a kid or you're young and you haven't come out, how do you find a safe place?
It depends on where you are, right? I mean, if I'm in Iowa, there may not be as many resources, both from a community point of view or anything that has dollars behind it. Here in the upstate, we raise money every year for Uplift Outreach. It's a program that takes at-risk kids and give them a safe place to be, kind of an after-school thing, as well as we have other things that does housing for trans youth who have been evicted from their homes or ran away, whatever that case may be, from a toxic environment. It really does depend on what resources are around you, which I'm sure if you did go to your local library and jump on a computer and do a Google search, you probably would find those things. And again, it varies. It varies from state to state. It varies from north to south, east and west. It's hard for me to say what to do, but really the most important thing to do of that is to find a community. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, when I came to South Carolina, I did not find another crossdresser to have community with. I had to go out to the larger queer community to find people who were just under the umbrella, whether it be their sexuality, whether it be parents of a trans child, whether it be old queens or whatever it was. I embedded myself in a culture not designed for me. I was really like, I don't know what to do here. And they thought of me as a novelty. It's like, oh, you're cross-dressed? What's that like? I'm like, wait, aren't you gay and been doing this for 50 years? Like, you're asking me what cross-dressing is? So that was kind of mind-blowing to be like educating people in the community. But regardless, the first thing you need to do is find safety in a community, however that looks, whether it is neighbors, whether it's a community or a club at school, whether it is, you have the Gay Straight Alliance, GSA, here in the States in certain districts of schools that you could be a part of that. It's really about what is local to you and what you can find. But again, don't pigeonhole yourself into something that's like, I'm trying to find my exact existence. Just find people who are accepting, inclusive, provide a safe space for you. and just to be there for you if you need other resources.
Yeah, because it's so important to be yourself.
Yes.
And how do we go from here to what do we do from here other than vote to combat these policies? What should we advise people to do to help our communities to survive this and to make things better?
There's lots of things. One of the things that I tell people is not everybody's an advocate. It's like, I didn't think I was going to become an advocate, with the podcasts or the books or the workshops. That was not my intent. So I kind of became an accidental advocate, but now I love it. And I bring my strengths to the table of creativity, of writing, of doing presentations and kind of analysis. That's what I bring to my advocacy. But somebody may not think they can be an advocate, and they wouldn't know step one of how to do it. So you could give money to local charities that are going to do the good works with that money on your behalf, because that's what you can do. You could start something. You could, if you are in the trans community and maybe you're hidden, or maybe you're out to a few people, don't let any interaction, keep yourself safe and keep yourself private, if always first and foremost, but don't let other people just say shit and let it pass, let it stand. Stand up for, even on a one-on-one interaction, stand up for the rights of every human being. And you don't have to gloss it up as oh, the trans, how are you talking down to the trans? No, you just need to say, as human beings, we should be kind and empathetic and understanding to each other. So if you could even combat that from a one person, once a week, that just has a hard line and just doesn't want to think about anything other than what they already know in their worldview, that could be the difference.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just being a voice. It doesn't need to be a super loud voice, but being a voice, I think, in any capacity, in any medium, whether it's socials, whether it's in a book, whether it's on a stage, whether it's a little TikTok, whatever it is, that's the first step.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I know one thing for sure is that I want to learn more of the different communities too myself, and certainly the Two-Spirit. And so if anybody's out there that wants to reach out to me, I would love to learn more. But and I do learn more by just reading and I think everybody needs to do that, to learn more, because broaden your horizons, get to know who people. I think it just makes us richer when we have a better understanding of who's around us and more sense of community. So thank you so much for coming back on for this very weird discussion.
Yeah, I came in cold, so you were handing out the hits for sure.
Okay.
I loved it.
Thank you.
This is Debbie Elicksen. Thank you to my guest and to you, the viewer, for watching this episode of Locker Room for Growth. Please subscribe to this channel and check out our past shows and clips in the YouTube playlist. The show broadcasts from Treaty 7 on Turtle Island, the traditional territory of the Blackfoot people, which includes Siksika, Blood, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda Nations, and Métis Nation Region 3. Again, thank you for watching, and please subscribe.